welcome to episode 490 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn,
Mike O'Malley,
Reid Ramsey.
And today we're joined by first-time Cinematary participant Crue Smith, whose movie we actually talked about last week. So shout out to Crue.
how's it going?
We're excited to have you. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has. It has. I'm excited to be part of Cemetery. Excited to do this.
All right. Well, this episode, we're going to be doing movies that we saw this week, as always, in part one. And then in part two, we'll be hitting our second Patreon pick. This one comes from Patreon Tyler Chandler, who has asked us to watch Salt from 2010. In what, before we started recording, Crue referred to as the most 2010 movie of all time. And honestly, super fair assessment. We'll just leave it at that. Speaking of a movie that probably could have came out in 2010, but came out just last week, Reid, I want you to tell us about the latest Netflix. Shoot, who's the director?
Wow, you're making me pronounce it. That's a good idea. Jaume Collet-Serra.
Yeah.
The Spanish director who brought us some wonderful movies like The Shallows and the Liam Neeson trilogy of Nonstop, Run All Night, and there's another one in there. The Commuter. Yeah. And then he went and made some Disney movies, and we forgot about that. But this is his wonderful return to form of just the most, maybe the best, plot, just typical plot for an action movie you can imagine. Taron Egerton wakes up. It is Christmas Eve. He's a TSA agent. His girlfriend, who we learn is pregnant in the opening scene, also works at the airport. They're on their way to work. He isn't really inspired by his job. He wants to be a police officer, but he's just clocking in, ready to get some stuff done, ready to be a father. And little does he know that he's about to run into some terrorists on Christmas Eve. So then enter terrorists led by evil Jason Bateman, or as Grace referred to before the episode, Jason Bateman, who is honestly, he does nothing different. It's essentially Michael from Arrested Development, and it hits perfectly. The tone works so well. He's really good in it, actually, as a Hans Gruber-esque terrorist. But it's just a very straightforward action movie. It is Taron Egerton is a guy who is looking for some purpose in his life, and of course he finds that purpose through saving the entire Los Angeles airport on Christmas Day, basically. And of course he finds the spirit of Christmas along the way. It's both a good Christmas movie and a good action movie. Honestly, I had a really good time, but I just I don't know. I don't have a ton to say because it is very just straightforward, but I would recommend it. I like most of this guy's movies.
I'm thinking of other so this is Jason Bateman's Steve Carell and Foxcatcher. This is
exactly that. Or I feel like it flips the other way more often, like John Hamm doing 30 Rock.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm looking for Amy Poehler to take a darker role, something like that.
Yeah, she needs to. Tina Fey as a terrorist, I would watch. Yeah.
This guy's movies I feel are kind of hit or miss. You mentioned the Disney. I forgot that he made the Disney movies. I think most people did. I like The Shallows. I can't say that I really vibed with a lot of the Liam Neeson ones. Walk Amongst the Tombstones, was that him?
Oh, I think so.
I don't even know.
May not be, but that's the same vibe. You're picking up on the same movie there.
I like that one.
And then he made. I'm thinking of Alexandra Asia or whatever. But I'm getting them mixed up.
It's all
they're all the same. But I really like The Shallows when it came out in 2018. So I've been weirdly tuned into whatever this guy's doing. Although I never saw Black Adam. But this one, I had a really good time with. It's a really ideal sit your family down, just turn something on in the background, but something your dad will pay a little too much attention to instead of everyone else on Christmas. It's the perfect movie for that. So
I saw somebody's
recommendation
letter.
from me.
I saw somebody's letterbox was like, "This is the perfect." Mom and dad are sitting there like, "Hey, well, what do you want to watch?" And like that movie's on Netflix. It's like, there you go.
It's not going to offend anyone, I don't think. Maybe, but it's just a pretty straightforward movie, but I had a really good time. I would watch the action. There's one shot in this movie that I actually bet some people will like balk out when they watch, but it's in a car and it's a single take. And the movie is pretty shot fairly straightforward through most of it, but there's a single take in the car that involves a car wreck and a fixed camera just like on the dashboard, basically facing the inside of the car. And it's a really like pretty amazing shot in my opinion. And so that alone might be worth it. That one kind of like, I don't know, got my attention.
Grace, why is it not evil Jason Bateman? Why is it just normal Jason Bateman?
Oh, it's just a personal vendetta with Arrested Development, the end of Arrested Development, how he treated the late, great Jessica Walter and, sticking up for Jeffrey Tambor and everything. That's really it. He's just kind of a real snarky kind of guy. He's a guy's guy. Hey, guys, don't take everything too seriously. Sorry, this maybe hurts your feelings. That's all. I was also just trying to be funny, silly, and now Jason Bateman knows that I think that he is evil if he's listening.
You better hope that you're wrong about him being evil then, because you might be in trouble.
Yeah, watch your next flight. I feel like he's like he's on the same side of the coin as Ryan Reynolds, and I find Ryan Reynolds to be much more evil than Jason Bateman.
Yeah, I mean, there's something very insidious about Reynolds's egotism.
Yeah.
Ignorance too. He's pretty loudly ignorant. I can't stand him either. But
he's the perfect movie star for a second Trump era. I'll just say that.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
I hope Ryan Reynolds hears that.
I hope he does too.
Somebody clip this.
We're calling everybody out.
Right?
Jason Bateman, Ryan Reynolds, count your fucking days.
Carry On now on Netflix. It's a good time. Watch it with pops.
Keep calm and carry on.
That's pretty good. I'm surprised they didn't work that into the movie, to be honest. Did they? Oh, okay.
The little on the poster.
It's pretty just straightforward. Like, there's really no other. The Carry On is just an item in the movie because it's at an airport. They don't really give more layers to it than that.
I kind of like that. I don't want.
Carries on with his regular day.
Yeah, that's good too. I don't. We'll talk about it in part 2. I don't need all of these different levels. Like, just be entertaining.
You didn't need the terrorist to also be an agent of the U.S. government, but also an agent of another government as well.
No, I didn't need that. I just needed people to have their asses kicked, and it to be fun. And that's a little preview of part 2, at least from my perspective. Let's shift over to people. People get their asses kicked in this, but I feel like it's much more enjoyable, and that's Hundreds of Beavers, which I know Grace, Michael, you both, as well as Crue, saw recently at Central Cinema. Michael, do you want to introduce the movie, or unless somebody else wants to?
No, I can introduce the movie. So I guess Hundreds of Beavers is like a fairly low budget independent film that's been like kicking around, I guess, for a couple of years, really. In fact, when we saw it at Central, it was its second run at Central over the course of this calendar year. I think the first was in like February or April or somewhere around there. So it's kind of doing this whole like rollout. It got I think Vinegar Syndrome put out a Blu-ray, but anyway, it's like a word of mouth hit. And here's the word of mouth that I'm going to give you, is that this movie is like basically like a Buster Keaton like style, like black and white silent film, except that it's also done with digital effects that make it basically have the logic of Looney Tunes and or a video game. So you have like really cheap looking digital effects that like I think make it even funnier. But like, so there's this guy and he's got this like some sort of alcoholic apple something. They call it Applejack, like distillery, and he blows it up by accident at the beginning of the movie, and is then like destitute in the middle of like nowhere in the woods, and it's like the 1800s or something. So he's like a pioneer, and so most of the movie is him doing these like kind of like a big like comic like slapstick set pieces, kind of like you might expect to see like a silent film star doing, except that like all the animals he encounters are in like these like animal mascot suits. They're like real people in animal mascot suits. And then all the effects are largely like these cartoonish ones that, you have like, people like spinning around, like, Looney Tunes characters are being like, I don't think an anvil is actually dropped on someone, but it's like that caliber of like thing happening to people. I thought it was super funny. It's extremely funny. I don't know when, I don't know if we established if all three of us saw it in the same screening as Central Cinema, but like the screening I was in, like the crowd was losing its mind, and like I thought it was a very fun experience to see as a crowd, but also just like a very clever movie. Like it truly is like this kind of like, Chuck Jones meets like, the silent film sort of thing, plus like some like video game stuff too. Like the guy kind of like levels up and like does like a little like Minecraft or like cookie clicker kind of thing where he like slowly accumulates all this all the beaver fur, and there's like kind of a surreal element to that as well as he does it, because like the beavers get like increasingly more complicated, like almost as if like they're like enemies in a game, like scaling up. You get some like amazing gags in here too. Like at one point, like a beaver dressed as like Sherlock Holmes and like a beaver dressed as like Watson like show up, and they're trying to investigate like who's been killing all these beavers. There's like a Hong Kong style like fight scene at the end when he's like fighting the like final bosses of the beavers. I don't know. It's the kind of movie where you just kind of like remember that part, and you just kind of list it off, because like the concept is fairly simple, but it is just like kind of escalating these little bits and like adding in new details until by the end it's this kind of like fairly complicated thing where all these like running gags have come together. And I don't know. I'll let the other two people talk who saw this, but I thought it was a lot of fun.
I'll say this. I tried watching Hundreds of Beaver like last year, just kind of renting it, and watching it at like 11:30 alone by yourself is not the way to see it. Seeing with the crowd, it really works on that level. And just as a filmmaker, I think it's encouraging to see that, like, yeah, they reference Chuck Jones, Chaplin, and Buster Keaton a lot, and having that kind of mixed with, like, it is structured like a video game. As you said, it's sort of kind of like he gets more, he leveled up, he learns new skills, he gets new things.
There's like even like a shopkeeper where they're like scrolling through the menu.
It's like you have to have these things to unlock that, and you're like, okay, but kind of blending both kind of a modern and a classic sensibility. That's where I kind of think it shines. See it with a crowd if you can, and it is interesting that it took so long to get distribution. I don't really know a lot about that, but it's kind of like, because the two guys that made it, their last movie, I can't think of the name of it, but it got like an Arrow release, and then this one got a Vinegar Syndrome release. But I kind of think that, like, no, word of mouth, and it's hitting with an audience, so that's good.
Oh yeah, like there were times where I wasn't exactly laughing at everything that I saw, but I was laughing with my audience. It was nice to see what really like tickled them the most, especially the horse, this man in a horse costume. That's the horse that, like, my audience lost it. I lost it there, but it just made it that much more enjoyable and memorable. The blending works really well. I struggle with video games. I am not a gamer in any sense of the word, but I like watching people play video games. So that was, really it did that for me. I was pretty impressed by the silent comedy, although some of the silent comedy, what do you guys think? If there was something like decidedly like millennial about the body language and the humor,
Yes.
it felt very Beard, Bacon.
Yes.
Sort of,
that is. And that's why I didn't like it the first time I tried watching it.
Yeah,
I was just like, this is just some. I was just like, this is some really just some millennial shit.
Yeah.
And then when I watched it with a thing, and then I was like, you know what? I'm kind of happy that like people are glomming onto the classic things with this, because it is informed. It's an informed movie, but at the same time, my gripe with it as well is like it is the most millennial, like Beard and like inside jokey kind of stuff. Beard and Bacon, it is that, but there are some good things about it too.
Yeah, definitely. I was also very like, I kind of clocked the guy. I was like, you just wanted to have your shirt off in this movie, and that's fine. You know, he was very fit, but as he started to like lose bits of his clothes, I was like, see, I know why it had to be you. I know why you directed yourself in such a way. Nothing, wrong with that. I surely sat through the whole thing. But it's, A Wing and a Prayer and After Effects and probably like 50 cents was all this guy had to his name. And, or maybe he had more than that. I really can't say.
No, I watched some behind the scenes stuff that I found, I think I don't remember where it was. It was on some YouTube channel, and they had very few sets. Like even some of the locations that you think are separate, like they're like flipping it and then like taking half of the picture and like superimposing it on like another half of the picture, and like for instance, the cave entrance to where the wolves are, which there's wolves who have like stolen his bag of beaver pelts in the movie. Like that cave entrance is the same thing as, I'm trying to remember what other scene in the movie. Another thing that's like video game like about this movie, but not the video games that we've referenced already, is like it's very like point and click adventure type movie. You ever watched like or played like King's Quest or like I don't know, something like that, where there's like a single static screen that your character walks around. Like that's a lot of this movie too, is like a static shot. The camera is not very dynamic. You have like camera set up probably on a tripod, and then like a bunch of like effects like going on in the single shot. And so like with the backgrounds, like a lot of them were either like stock images or like obviously like digitally manipulated things. I don't know. I like that element of it as well. I do think like the millennial humor didn't bother me so much. There is like a sort of like, I get that it's like low budget, but like some of the stuff, it's like, it maybe leans a little bit too hard into like, we're trying to make it funny because it's low budget. Like a lot of the effects are intentionally cheap looking, and that works a lot of the time. Sometimes it feels like it doesn't quite work visually, but I mean, that's maybe the only thing that didn't quite work for me, is like occasionally the effects like were like the gag itself was like, look how, like for instance, the opening is this kind of like really this bangier song, like the theme song. I don't know, it's not really a theme song, but it's like all about like this guy's like Applejack still. It's like a banging song, but it all is like, it looks like a Flash animation from like 2005 or something like that. And like the kind of like this part of like the gag is like, it's like knowingly like, haha, isn't the like kind of something you might see on like Funny or Die in like the early days of like Funny or Die or something like that, before they have even a slight bit of budget. And some of that stuff is a little bit like, doesn't really work for me. But I don't know. I had a great time with this movie. I don't know. I kind of wondered, Crue, to your point, if I had watched this alone, whether it would have hit like it did. Because
don't watch it at 11:30 on like a Tuesday. I was just like, what? Yeah, whatever. And again, the millennial stuff that Grace is talking about, way more when you watch it by yourself and you're just like, But if you watch it with a group, I think it kind of lands. But yeah, I don't know. Like seeing it a second time, I was like, all right, this is. I dug it a little bit more.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a movie that's entering like a like midnight madness kind of like, that somewhat of a hidden gem type scenario. I really liked it. I saw it earlier this year. I missed going to see it again. It came through Charlotte again and like sold out the whole like 3 theaters here at the Art House Theater. People were really, it was when I saw it the first time, it was like a one night only thing and it was with a crowd and it was great. I just find it to be like, I find the gags to be like relative, like pretty inventive. And mainly like, I like, we were talking earlier about like, it's like Chuck Jones, Chaplin, Keaton. I'm like, I like that kind of stuff. And you don't see that kind of stuff as often. So I think just on that level of like, hey, you don't see this stuff as often. That really worked for me.
There's just some like amazing like visual gags that keep going too. Like there's this one part where he's like hunting rabbits by like their tracks in the snow, and it's like this kind of like classic like Looney Tunes thing where the snow tracks like kind of morph and you kind of see like a kind of mini narrative in it, but this just keeps going, and he like follows like it seems like 2 or 3 generations of rabbits as they've like reproduced and had kids and then like gone their separate ways, like, and there's like a whole like mini story, and there's like a few different bits like that where it like takes kind of like a standard like setup like gag or visual gag and just like pushes it just a little bit further. I was reading and I saw some people say that this movie was too long, and I can imagine someone feeling that way because it's like a full 90 minutes at least, maybe even over that, and without a ton of like a forward momentum for some of it. But I think that like it's just like constantly throwing new stuff at you or doing unexpected things with the things that it's already thrown at you that I thought it flew by for me.
Yeah.
I think that this is a really great progression in silent film, especially now, having seen a whole festival's worth of silent film where they're doing anything and everything, where fresh, inventive film in its infancy, where they'll try anything, any gag, up the ante again and again and again. And this feels like a really good modern take on silent film, even though it's not entirely silent. They have like one bit of spoken dialogue, but this, if you enjoyed this and you're like, I am interested more in silent comedy, then this could be a good entry point for new fans. Yeah,
it's a nice reprieve from like the more improv based like comedies that we get nowadays. Hundreds of Beavers. I saw it's on Canopy. And it's also on Amazon Prime. So check them out. Check it out there. Get a group together though. Watch it together. Well, cool. I'm going to toss it over to you, Crue. You had a movie you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So I saw 2 movies just to keep relevant. Yeah, I did see Craven. He's a himbo. He kills drug dealers. He's got the blood of a lion. Fine. It's not. This is not fine.
Enough said.
Yeah. So I want to talk about a movie I saw called Imaginary Crimes. So this came in a box set. There's this company called Imprint that is out of Australia that does boutique Blu-rays. They made a Harvey Keitel box set that they put like Bad Lieutenant and Dangerous Game and Clockers in. But there's this one movie in the box set, Imaginary Crimes, that I thought was an interesting movie. It's directed by Anthony Drazen. It is from 1994. It's this Douglas Sirk-esque melodrama where Veruza Balk is his daughter along with Elizabeth Moss, and their dad is Harvey Keitel, and their mother has died of cancer, and Harvey Keitel is this like piece of shit con man that just kind of destroys their life because he's an alcoholic and a con man. And I just thought it was a good melodrama. I think that it's got a powerful performance by Harvey Keitel and everyone involved. He's just like a real bad guy. Like the whole plot is that or the main plot is that he has like some land up in he wants to invest in land with Chris Penn out in like near Portland, Oregon. This takes place in like the early 60s. and he's just trying, or I think he like either owns the land or something, and he's trying to like get people to invest in this mine that he has. So people invest in it, he just kind of takes the money, and it's seen through the eyes of his daughter, is like he just kind of like getting into trouble and then just kind of like not doing what he's supposed to. But yeah, I just thought it was a good movie, and I think people should watch it, especially if they like Douglas Sirk kind of things and Harvey Keitel. So yeah.
In terms of Douglas Sirk type things, I'm thinking of like the direct Douglas Sirk type thing that Todd Haynes did. Is it like a pretty solid one? Is it a good?
Yeah. So like, okay. So I put it like this: if we're going to talk about Todd Haynes, he shoots things like, let's take Carol for instance. The performances in Carol are a bit sterile for good reason, but the cinematography is like, wow, he's really wanting to go for that look. Imaginary Crimes, the cinematography is great and kind of like the aesthetics on point, but like their performances are less sterile. They're a little bit more animated. So it's actually kind of like an inverse of that almost, but just kind of the setting and kind of the tone and the melodramatic, performances, I feel like kind of fit into that category. So
interesting. Yeah, I'd never heard of this, and I was like, go ahead.
Yeah, because again, because you're like, what's the movie? And I was like, let me think about it, and I was like, I just don't want to talk about Craven. So yeah, I was like, I have seen this. I should hype this up a little bit more. But yeah, it just came in a box set. I think you can rent it on Amazon Prime and Apple.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. The director, Anthony Drazen, his most well-known movie is from 1998, Hurly Burly, followed by Zebrahead.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of those. So I know Zebrahead has Michael Rapaport, and I think I kind of pulled up here. It's got Michael Rapaport in it, and then the other one has Hurly Burly has somebody in it. Yeah, it has Sean Penn and Kevin Spacey and Robin Wright in it. So yeah, I have. Again, he's only made like 3 movies. I think he directed some TV. I also think he's from New Zealand, but yeah, he hasn't really done a lot. But
well, we're going to be in that neck of the woods in part 2 in a second. So
yeah.
Yep, that's Imaginary Crimes. I'll wrap us up real quick with All We Imagine Is Light. This was one that got on the radar. It's popped up as one of the best films of the year on a couple critics lists. I had seen stuff out of TIFF. I don't know if Grace, you remember this one. That I'd seen people talking about this at TIFF.
I do, but I didn't catch it. Yeah.
Yeah, we just weren't able to get to it. It's a really nice movie though. It's from India. It takes place in Mumbai, and you follow 3 different women. You have one, the head nurse, Prabha. She's the head nurse at this hospital that's not. You can tell it's kind of a lower economic hospital, kind of in the outskirts of Mumbai, not like in the heart of the city where you see a lot of the younger people kind of going out and just doing city stuff. But she's comes home one day and she's received this like really, really fancy, nice rice cooker from her husband, who she hasn't talked to in over 2 years, and they're kind of estranged. And so she's trying to like parse what this like random gift from him means. Then you have her roommate, who's not related to her, but is a woman who also, a younger woman who works at the hospital as well, named Anu. And she has a boyfriend. She's Hindi and he's Muslim. And they're just like constant, like they're just like trying to find a spot where they can like, pretty much they're trying to find a spot to make out. Like they just want to go and like have a spot where they can, be intimate, etc. And you have this third woman, Parvati, who she's been living in this kind of rundown apartment building for 20 years or so, and these developers are coming in and saying that they're going to run them down, and she doesn't have like the proper paperwork which would bar them from being able to kick her out. And so she can't find the paperwork because it was something that her husband had, and her husband has died. And so she's kind of just like, just kind of out of luck in trying to find what her next move is going to be. And it's directed by Paul Kapadia. And it's a very like intimate drama. It has like this kind of jazzy, somewhat kind of like very, very urban romanticist score going through it the entire time. It's very much like just these three women at different parts of their lives, trying to not only just navigate these different situations, but also just navigate, their economic standing. It's a very like socially conscious movie of like, these are women who are not, and just the people that they're around. These are people who don't have a lot of the means that you would expect, like in being in this big city. And a couple of them talk about, they talk about the kind of fight between staying in the village that you grew up in or coming to Mumbai and like making it in the big city. And somebody says that like one of five people who are my age in the village like usually comes to the city, and it kind of just sucks you in, and you kind of lose that personality, because in the third act of the movie, Parvati, she's eventually, it's not giant spoiler, but she's kicked out of her apartment, and so she's like, I'm just like, just screw it, like throwing my hands up, I'm just gonna go back to my village where I lived at before and just kind of figure it out from there. And they go to this village, and it's like by the beach. It's, there's just like, trees everywhere. It's really beautiful. It's very serene. And it just, you kind of get this like, they finally get like time to breathe for the first time. They're not, you don't have these like, these dark skyscrapers around them, and the train shuttling them all over the place. Electricity is a little bit scarce, and so a lot of the movie just feels very dark and somewhat like unexplored. Like, you don't, like, there's just parts of the city that you feel like are just kind of closed off to them. And I think honestly, all three of the performances are really nice. The lead actress who's playing the head nurse, I think kind of is the one who you kind of latch on to. She very much, like, she's not blood related to the younger girl, but she kind of feels somewhat of a maternal relationship to her, or at least just kind of almost like a big sister, just kind of like, hey, like, don't make, like, I'm going to keep you from making stupid mistakes, but I'm also going to like let you live your life. And she's kind of fighting that because, she's initially reacting to a lot of the decisions that the younger girl's making as kind of, her working through her own shit, and kind of just being like, they talk a lot about, because the younger girl's family is putting her, like, sending her men for like a forced marriage. And so, and that's what happened to the lead character. And she's kind of like working through that. And because that whole situation of the forced marriage, she talks about how, she met him, they get married, he's there for like a little while, and then he's like sent off the war, and he lives, I think they say he's like stationed in like Germany or something. And so she really, it's kind of just this stranger in her life. And so, you have her who has that, you have the other woman who also had a forced marriage, but like really loved her husband. And so it's just kind of like those two different perspectives. And this younger girl who is very much living like a, an impossible love. There's one sequence where her boyfriend invites her to come over to his place because his aunt and uncle are gone. And so he's like, we can come and like, we'll have time to be intimate. And she goes and is like trying to buy a burqa so that she can pose as a Muslim woman so that she can like get through that part of town and not be pulled over, harassed. I don't know. It's a very quiet movie. It's a very kind of peaceful movie, but it's also a movie that's very like, I wouldn't say like massively politically charged, but it also is very it's very conscious of like where these women are at and the pressures that are thrust on them, really without their choosing. If it's playing around, I really recommend it. I think it's I can see why a lot of people. It's probably one of the ones I've really liked this year, and I think is one that I'm excited to revisit. So yeah, All We Imagine Is Light. Check it out if you can. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we will be talking about Salt after this. And we're back with part 2 of episode 490 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to be finishing off our quick Patreon pick series with a pick from Tyler Chandler. And Tyler generally, honestly, just to say, has led us in good directions. We did Air Force One. We did The Core, which The Core wasn't good, but damn, was The Core entertaining.
It was kind of a banger.
It was super,
I'm kind of sensing
super
a theme though. I feel like that there's like a line between all three of these.
Yeah, I'll just be honest with it, and I couldn't find the line with this one. This one was a little bit rougher.
It's all like dad cinema. It's like dad core.
He's the dad.
Like TBS core, like Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, TBS core. This is the most TBS movie. This is the perfect, I'm sick in high school and they're putting Salt on TBS or USA. Let's go.
I was dealing with a cold yesterday, so maybe that. I'm glad to hear that I'm vindicated in not understanding what was going on. So I felt a little lost in this one. All right, Salt, directed by Philip Noyce from a script by Kurt Wimmer. Film stars Angelina Jolie, Liev Schreiber, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Daniel Obritsky, and August Deal. When Evelyn Salt became a CIA officer, she swore an oath to duty, honor, and country. But when a defector accuses her of being a Russian spy, Salt's oath is put to the test. Now a fugitive, Salt must use every skill gained from years of training and experience to evade capture. But the more she tries to prove her innocence, the more guilty she seems. The early development of the script began while Kurt Wimmer was doing interviews promoting Equilibrium. In a November 2002 interview, he discussed on which scripts he was working. He stated, "I have several scripts, foremost of which is one called The Far-Reaching Philosophy of Edwin A. Salt, kind of a high-action spy thriller." In another interview, Wimmer described the project as, quote, "very much about me and my wife." I'm just going to leave that there.
First of all, drop the ball not keeping that first title, too. Come on.
I know, right? For my wife in this one. The plot incorporated many elements of Equilibrium, which starred Taye Diggs and Christian Bale, with an oppressive and paranoid political system of brainwashing that gets overthrown by one of its high-ranking members, who rebels due to an emotional transformation. With its shortened title, Edwin A. Salt, the script was sold to Columbia Pictures in January 2007. By July 2007, the script had attracted the attention of Tom Cruise. Philip Noyce was attracted to Salt for its espionage themes, which are present in most of his filmography, as well as the tension of a character who tries to prove his innocence, yet also does what he was previously accused of. Initial discussions took place in 2008 between Tom Cruise and Noyce about Cruise playing Salt. These discussions were going on for more than a year between the pair. But Cruise decided he was unable to commit to the script because he feared the character was too close to his Mission Impossible character, Ethan Hunt. Cruise decided to work on Night and Day instead. The filmmakers tried to differentiate the character from Hunt, but eventually came to accept that they were too similar and decided not to change the characteristics of Salt. Noyce said, quote, "But he had a valid point. It was kind of running to an offshoot of a character that he'd already played. It's like playing the brother or the cousin of somebody that you played in another movie." Columbia Pictures executive Amy Pascal suggested Angelina Jolie to the director, who had often spoken to Jolie in the past about a desire to craft a female spy franchise. Pascal even invited Jolie for a Bond girl role, but the actress replied that she was more interested in playing James Bond herself instead. One of Jolie's requests was to rework the third act, which originally had Salt rescue his wife and son from a coalition of villains because she did not believe a mother would neglect her child in this kind of situation. Wimmer decided then to make Salt more crucial to the villain's schemes and add a sequence where Salt breaks into a place harder than Fort Knox. And then after considering Camp David, Wimmer settled on the White House. When asked if the script written for Crue is the same for Jolie, he said, quote, "I think it's just become a continual process, obviously accelerating by changing the central character, but the ideas, the locomotive of ideas that drive the film are the same. An undercover CIA operative is accused of being a Russian mole and has to go on the run to defend himself. That's been the same since day one. The tone of the film has changed in this evolution. In the same way, I guess, as you know, action thrillers have changed along the lines of the Bond films and the Bourne films." In 2010, the New York Times said the film itself moves with speed and efficiency. Miss Jolie's contribution is to endow the silliness with a gravity and clarity of purpose that makes you care for a scant hour and a half who Salt is, what she does, and where she stands. Now, not that she stands for much or stays still for very long. The LA Times in 2010 said Salt is set up as most films seem to be these days with a sequel in mind, and that might be fun, especially since Salt 2 would become the first Hollywood blockbuster to be named after a real-life nuclear arms reduction treaty. Now that would be something to look forward to. And then Roger Ebert in 2010 came in hot for Salt. Although Salt finds an ingenious way to overcome history and resurrect the Russians as movie villains, neither that nor any other elements of the plot demand analysis. It's all a hook to hang a thriller on. It's exhilarating to see a genre picture done really well. He died 3 years later. I mean, he might have been on the end of that rope. With that being said, let's talk about Salt. I said this in the chat. I watched this yesterday. I don't remember much from it. It was not even 24 hours ago that I watched this, and I can't say that I remember a lot from it.
I watched this half an hour ago, and I can't even remember half of it.
Yeah. But yeah, Grace, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Let me get one thing out of the way. I am a tremendous Angelina Jolie fan. I am hugely obsessed. I admire her and for everything that she does as an actress, director, producer, mother, humanitarian person. She's amazing. I like I'm so interested in the way that she picks these roles, from Girl Interrupted to Gia to Bone Collector to this. And I latched on to this, to what she says about how she'd rather play Bond. And I think that there's definitely something there, as a lead, as a female lead in a male, in a made for a mail order spy thriller. It's lacking a lot of the trademark behavior of a spy thriller. And what it's really lacking for me, bear with me, as she's a female spy, is the sexuality. Like, it is like a completely sexless, almost like asexual film. And if we're thinking about Bond, there's the Bond girl. So there's like the romantics there, the tension there, that sort of honeypot character that, complicates the the main male character. I mean, even in the Bourne movies, there's a female romantic lead, co-lead, Mission Impossible, and then even in other spy movies that have a female lead, or female leads, I'm thinking like Charlie's Angels, there is like some sort of like sexual angle, and like this movie being like so completely devoid of sex, and her as the lead, like she doesn't rely on her sexuality to get her out of situations. Like she doesn't she doesn't have to fall back on that as part of the tools in her spy kit. It's all just actual like action, mental capacity and training. It's very physical in that respect. And in fact, the moment where she tries to use her sexuality, like at the very end, and she's speaking Russian to Lev Schreiber, as he is also Russian, and they were in the same sort of training camp, as she kind of tries to like lean back onto it. It doesn't even work. She like looks up at him with those big, gorgeous eyes and, let me in, and it doesn't work. So I thought that was a really interesting take on a female spy. And I think that I wonder how much of that is like the script, how much of that is Angelina. Like, no, I'm serious. I know that she also did a lot of her own stunts for this. Like she was pretty adamant about that. I know she can ride motorcycles, so I know she did the motorcycle scene. She, is swinging around on harnesses. So I think that she really had a definite vision in mind for who Salt was going to be. And I think that she stayed true to that throughout. All of that is just to say, I still didn't really like this movie, but I really like her in it, and I applaud her efforts. I could definitely see this. I would have loved a sequel, and then maybe like a straight to TV third installment, and then it like kind of fizzles, and then maybe like 5 years later it's picked up as like a serialized TV show, like a la Reacher on TNT.
Yeah.
And, somebody else is Evelyn Salt, some up-and-comer, but...
This seems like prime, like, Peacock original. That's what
very,
it
very...
like.
I'm a little bit surprised that there wasn't a sequel, because I was, in my head, like, this was a flop, but I was looking back at it, it made, like, it almost made $300 million at the box office on like a $110 million budget. I don't know. Maybe that just doesn't compute enough for a sequel, but... I was a little. It's so obviously setting up a sequel. I was surprised that there was no thing.
There's not really an ending. It's just kind of. It's just like a block, like a Lego block missing for the second part of the movie.
Well, it's the Bourne Supremacy ending, which I guess didn't actually get a direct sequel either.
It didn't. But it didn't have like the cool Moby music.
It needed more Moby. That was what was missing. That's what I go into every movie thinking. Needs more Moby.
Yeah, it needed more Moby. I think going off of what Grace said, I will say that there is a. So you're talking about like, there's not really like sexuality and stuff to it. I think there's a sleekness to Angelina Jolie that makes a lot of sense for this role, because they wrote it for Tom Cruise was attached, very slick guy. So the female equivalent of that is probably Angelina Jolie. However, it's so sleek that the sleekness is what gets in the way of it. I think that there's not a room to breathe. And I think with what you were saying, kind of like it's not sexy enough. It's sexy, but it's not sexy enough. And I also think that like you have kind of like going on like kind of the script, you get locked in. You know what the plot is like she was in North Korea as a spy, and you're like, why was she in North Korea? Who gives a shit? Then you're just like, and then he talks to the Russian guy, and you're like, you're Evelyn Salt, you're gonna kill the president. She's like, what? And then everybody comes after, and then there's not any time to actually breathe. So I mean, I think this movie is too slick for its own good. Is maybe what I would say about it.
Yeah, it opens with that North Korea scene where you just open and Angelina Jolie's just getting mauled by North Koreans, and then she's given up, and you're like, okay, And then it's like, oh, we were going to let you go, but this guy saved you. And you're like, well, who the hell is that guy?
He's the ugliest man I've ever seen in my life.
So he goes.
That's another thing. He's not an attractive male co-lead.
So I'm wondering. I'm watching. I'm like, how did this guy get Angelina Jolie? Because they have the flashback, and he's like, yeah, it's like he's an ugly guy that goes up to. He's like, hey, and then she's like, hey, and then he's like, you know what I like? I like spiders.
You want to see my spiders?
Yeah.
But wait. The whole thing is an op, though, right? Like, isn't that what's revealed? Is that they want her to get with this guy because he has access to the North Korea because of his arachnology or something like that?
Which is laughable. How?
No. You will
How?
not besmirch the privilege of the arachnologist.
I thought that she genuinely fell for him because he fought for her to save her. Well,
we don't know that. There was no build up
later, but
we don't know that at all. I don't know.
I was under the impression, and as the only woman on this panel right now, I took it as she's not an asset to him. She's not an operative to him. To him, she's a woman, and a woman that he is in love with, regardless of, double identities, amnesia, whatever. The story of her, as she has sold it to him, is one that he loves and would do anything to save and protect. And I think that they didn't do enough to play up that tension of he is an opportunity at a normal life for her. Right. If we just follow a regular, CIA agent trying to have a normal honeymoon anniversary dinner, she's learning how to fold napkins at work. She wants a regular life with her bug guy husband. They have a dog together. They share an apartment together. There's some level of domesticity that it seems like she's trying to latch onto, but they don't play that tension enough. And then
there's no context in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no context. We only ever see her in spy mode. Because y'all just said, it opens with her being interrogated by the North Koreans, and then immediately she's on the run for potentially trying to assassinate the Russian president. Which, as an aside, is this maybe the latest a movie could have been in which the Russian president being assassinated was viewed as a horrible thing that the U.S. government wanted to stop? I feel pretty soon after this, the bottom fell out of Russia-USA relations.
Wasn't it? I was watching an interview of Angelina Jolie and for the press junket of this, and it was for ABC or something, Good Morning America, and they're like, wow, this movie is coming out, and this is when those 10 Russian spies were uncovered and then transported back to Russia. So then Angelina makes a comment about it. She's like, yeah, we're filming this and we were like, is this close enough to reality? Are we too far removed from Russia, Cold War, spies, etc.? And then that news broke and we're like, wow, no, this is really important, really powerful. And so
it is funny how Cold War, this movie is coded the North Koreans, being villains and calling her imperialist scum and all that sort of stuff. And then the Russian plot being a bunch of old Soviets basically trying to resurrect the Bolshevik program or whatever. It is weird that they didn't even try to graft the war on terror gloss to it, which I feel would have been the 2000s version of this. But it's just straight up what if the bad guys in the Cold War were still the bad guys?
Or they've always been the bad guys.
They've always been the bad guys, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, going off the North Korea thing, it's sort of this is kind of in the era where they start becoming more of the bad guy. You have the remake of Red Dawn, which has that, and you also have something like The Interview, 4 years after this.
Yeah, which is there started to be all saber rattling with the nuclear tests and the ocean and stuff.
Yeah, so I, and then it kind of goes into the most 2010s movie ever, because we have kind of like, we just got out of the Bourne movie, so now all the action movies kind of have to reflect Bourne movies. However, this one's kind of a few years after that. I mean, they get Robert Elswit, which shot this, guys. Like, I wonder who shot it. I'm like, oh wow, Robert Elswit shot it. They're like, yeah, can you just come here and shake the camera for us? And you kind of have just kind of like the whole. Again, just you have what they try to do with clever set pieces. Like, I think the taser car chase thing is kind of sick. But also, again, you have things that I don't know. Like, there's set pieces that work, and there's stuff, and there's action sequences that work. But then there's other ones that are just camera shaking. Oh shit, he's got a From Russia with Love boot knife thing that he kills people with, and then it's like, yeah, and then you're like, yeah, and yeah, going back to the boyfriend though, because I watched I had a DVD I rented from the library of this. I watched the unrated director's cut, so they don't drown the boyfriend because they just drown him, and then she watches him die.
So
in the Netflix version, they just like shoot him in the head and it's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Point
So there's there's a shot of her kind of looking sad, and then they kind of move on.
I was gonna say this brings me to like my one quibble with what we were saying about her not really caring about him is there's a very purposeful shot in which she like quivers her chin, which is like such a strange moment. It's like a good like 5 or 6 seconds long, I feel like, and it's pretty significant. I was like, are we supposed to care? Do we care that he just died? We've barely heard him speak.
I think so.
I think the boyfriend should be hot and really stupid, and I think that they should. He should be hot and really stupid, and I think that he should be into something cooler like windsurfing, and then I think that we would care about him more.
I actually like the spider. The spiders are pretty cool.
I like the spider thing because it's so like obscure. I want him hot and stupid, but he also knows a lot about spiders.
Yeah, I think that worked, and plus she could have the poison that makes the Russian president or whatever look dead, and then you realize that he's not dead. And but again, I don't know. It's like I remember watching this in high school and being like, it's all right. It's not any of the Bourne movies, and now I kind of think the same thing. But yeah. Well, actually, one other thing. The taser thing. Okay, so she doesn't kill any people, right? Like, she goes through and not kill anybody, except for the guy that she shocks to death with the taser, and he just the cop that just goes straight into the thing. So I think
she also absolutely melees Lev Schreiber at the end. She kills him.
Yeah, he kills him, but he deserves it. Yeah, No. I'm talking about like leading up to like where you think she's like a double agent.
She shot the hell out of some people, like point blank in the chest, like in St. Mark's in the church. Like, she is.
Yeah.
Just like these two random guards, she shoots both of them.
Yeah, she doesn't kill any of the
Russian president.
Crue.
Yeah, she doesn't kill any of the Secret Service guys though. Like, when she goes down there, she doesn't kill any of those guys. She only kills so I guess I don't know. There's inconsistencies is what I'm trying to say.
You're saying that the screenplay has some inconsistencies?
That reminds me of my favorite part of the movie. It's when Liev Schreiber's like turning on everybody, and the one guy goes, "I'm the national security advisor," and he goes, "Not anymore." And then
that is awesome.
Am I misremembering this, or does Lev Schreiber like start doing a Russian accent when he's revealed as being also Russian?
Oh,
yeah.
He speaks more Russian than Angelina does.
Can we back up and talk about the whole Russian mole plot? Because it's amazing.
Moles plural.
Moles plural. So the system is that this Russian guy, it started with the JFK assassination, which kind of sounds like that Arrested Development bit where he's like, I don't want to blame everything on 9/11, but it certainly didn't help. This is like, I don't want to blame everything on the JFK assassination, but it certainly led us somewhere. And it's that Lee Harvey Oswald was not actually Lee Harvey Oswald. It was the Russian mole who like switched places with him and then killed Kennedy.
Which is already so weird because like the Kennedy assassination conspiracies are already there with Lee Harvey Oswald as a Russian agent already. Like, you don't have to invent like a fake Lee Harvey Oswald.
No. Instead they just like They just do that instead. You're like, what? Like, no, those are there. Like, there's like that's fruitful for whatever conspiracy you want. And then that leads them to just make this legion of Russian children who are going to come to America and overthrow the government, but they don't like communicate with one another.
It makes it sound like little kindergartners.
That would have been so badass.
I mean, maybe baby geniuses to like topple.
Yeah.
American.
I mean, kind of. It's just like a bunch of children and young people who are just like, yeah, you're going to come and topple the government.
They're like trained by like kissing this ring. There's like a scene where they're all lined up. They have to bend and kiss the ring.
What age are we thinking the kids like come over and integrate into society? Because are we supposed to believe they like are perfectly trained spies at 11, and then I guess then they have to join the CIA. So then they get that training on top of it.
Yeah. They also go to Princeton.
Yeah. It kind of seemed that
she did go to Princeton.
It looked like they gave them like some sort of like little kids, babies first, like a Fisher Price sort of like child's militia sort of training, like Girl Scouty, Boy Scouty sort of training montage. I wonder if they've picked out each child, like, okay, you're gonna be the Secretary of State, I'm gonna plant you in some state local government. Like, imagine, I wonder
in some state.
What if you're like board member was a Russian Federation?
Oh my God, my water commissioner was a Russian mole. It makes no sense. That leads me to one point that I guess one of the alternate endings was that they like end with the president like has survived. And he goes to like the grave site, and it's like revealed that he's like Salt's dad, who allegedly died in a car crash, but he's become the president. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, I want to see that.
I'm like, insane. Honestly, that sounds amazing. That should have been the ending.
That sounds so cool. Well, that would have been in the sequel
setup. Yeah.
But sorry, Reid.
I was just gonna say, I think something you said in the lead up about the writer just being like, well, I wanted it to be like an impenetrable place, so he just like chose the White House. I think speaks to the whole setup of the movie. It feels like they just decided like, where should we go next, and then they just like did. Like, I think that actually Crue talked about it a little bit, but the opening like escape scene I think is actually pretty fun. Like, that's the high point of the movie, is when she's like found out and she escapes from there and then does like the truck thing and gets away. But I just think it's so funny that it's just like, okay, well, what should she do next? Well, she's going to kill the Russian president. Well, what's the next logical solution? Well, now she has to kill the American president. And then it's like, but then they just continually pull the rug out from under you. Like, the whole bit of the movie is like, how can we just like keep twisting it? Which like is fun to some extent. I mean, I'm the M. Night Shyamalan fan on the podcast, I guess. Like, I can't.
But I wish it was more fun. It it's not as fun. Like, we're describing it sounds fun, but it's not that fun.
It's like moment. Just not silly enough. Like, it needs to be just slightly more silly.
Because kind of what Grace was saying is like, you don't really know who she is. Also, like you're thinking she's doing it because they have her husband, but then the husband dies, and then you're like, well, why are you doing this? And then it's like, because you love America. She didn't even talk about loving America. She doesn't talk about loving her husband.
Yeah, where's that come from?
She's just doing this shit.
At that point too, I still think she's trying to kill. She's on the Russian side. Then is in my mind.
Wait, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought by the end she wanted to bring down the program that she was. She was conditioned from the inside.
I agree, but like when she kills like her trainer or whatever, I was like, okay, she killed him because he killed her husband, but I still thought she was still like kind of trying to see the plan through. I don't know. It was very hard.
Yeah,
but then she, because Liv Schreiber is trying to bomb Mecca, and then she's like, we're not doing that.
She didn't know that he was going to do that. She didn't know that there were like she's like being told that there's somebody else. I think that's like going to complete. Like, she only has the plan up to this far, and then it's up to her then to like she's the baton that's then passed on, so that like the next operative can complete the rest of the mission. And then it turns out that it's Leif Schreiber, which also I thought that they had, between the two of them, I thought that they had better chemistry than her and her husband. He plays her really well. Like, there is definitely like some tender feelings and a little bit of interesting sort of jealousy there that he plays. He plays a much better romantic. I would rather him be my husband, her husband.
Look, this was written by the man who wrote Law Abiding Citizen, and we're trying to debate that this is a good way to
he wrote this for him and his wife, though.
That's also weird.
He's the ugly arachnologist, or do you think
he wrote it for Tom Cruise and Christian Bale in mind, because you like Equilibrium did pretty good. We're gonna get Christian Bale in this one, and I'm gonna be Christian Bale, and then my wife that likes spiders. I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
Whatever.
I will say, I love when Chiwetel Ejiofor shows up in a role like this.
Yes.
Like, he does this so often in the 2000s. Like, he's in a very similar role in, like, Inside Man. And I was thinking of a few others. Oh, my goodness. But before, like, he won an Oscar. Yeah, he's so good as, like, this, like, third most important character. And I'm just really happy whenever he was on screen.
Yeah, no, he's actually the best. I'm actually going to say he's the best part of the movie because he's doing what he's supposed to. I mean, look, Angelina Jolie, again, this is a slick movie, but we don't have... I rarely say this, but it's almost like this movie needed to be, like... 30 more minutes longer just to kind of give us a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
it's she's it's not her fault. Like it's not her fault. It's the script, because she's not given any interiority. It's just like she's just this.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that this was for Tom, because let me tell you, if somebody can play no interiority, just like smooth-brained person and make it entertaining, it's Tom Cruise. Like, I read that earlier and I was like, I would have been so excited if this movie was with Tom Cruise instead of Angelina Jolie. But yeah, like that's a one-person job. Like, only one person can do that. You needed
but
something.
Even Tom Cruise has got to have, like, I don't know, like they compared him to Ethan Hunt. And my initial thought was, yeah, but the Mission Impossible movies have like fun stunts.
Super.
And like, this movie kind of like screams like competent with that, but like even the like escape sequence at the beginning that you guys are talking about, like that is like fun in a very like how a peanut butter and jelly sandwich can be good, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it is true that it's good and like entertaining, but like I think the fourth Mission Impossible movie came out at the same year as this. Was that 2010 as well? It was right around the same time. And like, man, I have shots of that movie burned into my brain.
Oh man,
whereas I can't think of a single. Yeah, the building in Dubai, Burj Khalifa, or whatever it is. Like, there are things in that movie that like, and it kind of doesn't matter that Tom Cruise is like a nothing, like, you know, person in the movie, because it's like he's running down the skyscraper, and like this is like the worst of both worlds in the sense of like there's nothing especially memorable, and while also not being like you know, engaging on a character level.
And she's got no good sidekicks. Like, think about Mission Impossible. You got Ving Rhames, you got Simon Pegg, you got Rebecca Ferguson, or whoever's like his love interest at any point in time. Yeah.
So what you're saying is even though, again, I think Philip Nice has made some good movies, but if Michael Mann was actually attached to direct this if Michael Mann did this movie, would it have been better? I think it would have been a little bit more memorable.
Yeah, so probably like 3 hours.
Oh yeah, but then we wouldn't be complaining about like there just wasn't enough. We would be like, there's a little too much actually.
Saul would have met her husband somewhere, and he would have been like, "What are you reading? Book about metals? Why are you reading that, lady? Why are you asking me about what I do and what I read?"
Yeah, and by the way, that set piece where she finds him, gorgeous. It'll be a gorgeous set piece. Yeah. There need to be more gorgeous set pieces in here. That's kind of it. It's like, look, we have Angelina Jolie is very slick and really cool, but we need set pieces that reflect that. And there's just not any. Kind of like what Michael was saying. It's like you don't have like any set pieces or any memorable moments, but you don't. Yeah, it's just kind of that. It's just, and again, you have probably one of the best cinematographers ever, but all you do is have him just shake the camera because it needs to be like Bourne, you know. But even then, it's like if you think about Bourne movies, like set pieces and stuff that happens, like you're not going to forget him like diving on that guy's back and then shooting the dude in the head while he goes down the stairwell.
Yeah, there's so much sick shit that goes on in the Bourne movies, and none of that's present here. Like it's
It's a good it is a good marker for like 2010's action, because this is also around the time when 2006 or what, I forgot when, like the first Daniel Craig James Bond comes out, and that's like heavily influenced by the Bourne movies, like Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
That one also rips too. Like Casino Royale is full of cool shit too. Like I guess like what it feels like that this movie is made of is like all the shots in between the cool stuff, where you can still tell that there's like talent like assembling it all and it's coherent, but you don't get like the punctuation that makes it cool. That was my feeling, which is why I feel like I have such a hard time like remembering what goes on in this movie, is because even though it's competently assembled, there's nothing for me to grab onto. It's like it goes from being slick to just being smooth, you know? I don't know.
Grace.
I was just gonna say, I was just thinking a lot about like the hits. You guys keep mentioning like the fight choreography and the hits, and no offense to Angelina, I would consider her a petite woman. I don't think I'm alone in that. Her punches specifically, I feel like in Bourne movies, Mission Impossible, Jack Reacher, whatever the hell, when our main guy hits someone, there is a sound that the fist makes, and like these hits, they seem they hit really hard, and hers just they don't have that oomph. I was just going to say that this whole movie is like her punching something, but without the like power or oomph. It's it's a well-crafted fist. She has all the technical aspects of it there, and it connects with the body, but there's no,
and this is before we got into like the like leg action where like the women like get on top and like just like break necks with legs. I mean, like a lot of Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Ferguson stuff. So I feel like she would have excelled in that.
Yeah, much stronger there. But I think that. I mean,
this is a PG-13 action movie, so it's like it's like no, that's the same thing. It's kind of like maybe it felt like the punches landed a little bit harder, but it's like I just remember being a kid and watching these movies coming out like this, and it's like you said, it's like the punches don't really land hard, and also the camera shaking around can hide a lot of violence because you don't really know what's going on. So because I don't know, it's just sort of like, again, I feel like most of the action movies now are just rip-offs of John Wick. A lot of action movies then were just rip-offs of Bourne. This one just, again, I didn't hate this movie. I mean, there's a lot to complain about, but it's not like egregious, but it's just kind of like, well, it's like with Kurt Wimmer, it's like, again, I watched or before we were recording, I was talking about I watched the remake of Thomas Crown Affair, and he wrote that. Even though I really like John McTiernan as a director, that script is just kind of like, it lacks the it's interesting that Grace kind of points out that there's not a lot of like we don't really have interiority to the characters, same way with, I think Michael said something about that, or we're all saying that, but it's like the original Thomas Crown Affair, very interior. You're kind of like this. It's like, what can you give the man that has everything, right? And so, but I think watching this remake, it lacks that. Too, it's just, okay, he does this, look at these cool set pieces, and then he sort of has the, kind of has the, oh, I want love and all this, but it's not as heavy as the original. I just don't know if like this screenwriter really can get that well. I think he tries to make, set piece action movie to set piece action movie, but he doesn't really have that kind of in between that people have.
Yeah. Anybody else have any
writers do?
Yeah. Anybody else have any final thoughts on Salt before we put that to bed?
Was this not like the funniest movie you guys had ever seen? I laughed the whole time. Specifically, I just want to give a special shout out to the gal that was at the computer in the interrogation room, like on the other side of the glass. And she's set up at the computer and she's scanning the Russian, leader guy's brain waves via some machine. She's able to see and she's like, brain scan is negative. He's telling the truth on everything. It's like, girl, shut the hell up. Like, what is that technology?
Grace, you would have loved the Core then, because the Core had some of the most wild technology of.
Like, I was like, is he getting radiation? Like, is he getting irradiated right now? Like, What is happening? Like, how is she able to tell, like, oh, the brain scan complete? It's like, not
do we even need that? Do we really even need, like, we could scan his brainwaves? No, you just need the exposition of him being like, you're the lady that's going to kill the president. She's like, and then that's what was supposed to happen.
He hasn't lied yet, and it's
yeah, but I don't know. Sure,
that was hysterical. I couldn't stop.
To your point, Grace, there's that one part where Liv Schreiber is like they're on the security cam footage. And he's like, wait, freeze that frame, zoom in. And I kept waiting for him to say enhance it, and he didn't. He didn't enhance it. Like, I was waiting for they needed to have more bogus technology. Come on.
Yeah.
Michael, Reid, y'all got anything?
I just got to say, there's something fascinating about movies that have just been kind of forgotten, but people will all remember. I think if you were a person who was going to the movies in 2010, you kind of probably remember that Salt existed, but have probably not thought about it in forever. And I don't know, there's just a weird collective unconscious with movies, and Salt is part of that. Because until this was suggested, I had not thought about Salt since I was 19 years old or however old I was when this came out. And I don't know, there's just something kind of weird. It's movies now are forgotten because nobody sees them and they're on Netflix, buried or whatever. No one's going to see Carry On. I'm sorry, Reid. That's going to be a forgotten movie.
It's
in
the movie.
Netflix top 10 right now.
Oh, is it?
Michael.
All right, well, sorry. But there are movies like Carry On that no one will see. Whereas there used to be movies that everyone saw and then also just forgot. And I think Salt is one of them.
I think that's the predominant mode of a Netflix movie, is to be seen and then immediately forgotten.
So how does that work? Can you, someone pays you, gifts you a gift on Patreon, and then you have to watch the movie because they gifted you that? So can I just gift you guys $10 and then just make you watch the shittiest Steven Seagal movie?
Yeah, See, that's
People
the thing,
don't really
though.
use it that way, though. That's weird.
Yeah, see, everybody uses it and tries to come up with something genuine, and I'm like, no, I would make us watch something awful. And instead,
he's gonna have a new Patreon member.
There you go.
We did have one of our other guys, Andrew, is a teacher, and one of his students joined the Patreon, so to force us to watch Romeo and Juliet. I think that's the closest we've ever come to kind of the sadistic patron.
Yeah, it was smart. I like that. I think that should be how the Patreon picks are used.
I agree.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Instagram at handle @Cinematary and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. If you'd like to torture us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinematary. You can donate $1. You can donate $5. As Crue said, you can donate $10. It can be recurring. It can be once, whatever you want to do. We'll take it and listen to the awful movie that you want us to watch. But thank you to our patrons, Cam, Ron Hayes, Tanner Huskins, Teresa Morsati, and Tyler Chandler, who picked Salt for us. Next week, we're going to be wrapping up 2024 with our best movies of the year. Always a fun episode, long episode. a lot of thoughts and feelings to get out, and it's a tradition. So be sure to check back with that one, though. We'll have some really cool cemetery news that we're going to be announcing in that episode as well. So see you then, and keep watching the movies.